My name is Mara Kellan, 38, compliance analyst at Halden Systems until today. The first sound I remember is the sharp crack of glass Richard Hale's coffee mug hitting the floor. Brown liquid bled across the tile toward my shoes. Around the table, no one dared move. "Security will escort you out," the CEO said evenly, like he was discussing quarterly revenue. He sat at the head of the glass-walled boardroom. Every eye turned toward him, the skyline of Boston stretching behind his reflection. Beside him, Evan Mercer, his star executive, the man everyone called Untouchable, folded his hands, smug and relaxed. "After this morning's disruption," Richard continued, "you've left me no choice." I felt the tremor in my palms but didn't hide it. Fear and clarity can coexist. I reached into my bag, pulled out the blue folder I'd kept locked in my drawer for months, and set it gently on the table. "You already made your choice," I said. "This is the consequence." He frowned, flipping it open. The room shifted. His jaw tightened as he recognized the signatures, his, Evan's, and the coded payments he thought no one would trace. Evan's smirk faltered. No one spoke. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. Then Richard's phone buzzed once, twice, a third time. He hesitated, then looked at the screen. The caller ID flashed in block letters. "Board chair urgent call." He froze. For the first time, the most powerful man in the company looked small. I leaned forward, voice low but steady. "You should probably answer that." The ring echoed off the glass walls, shrill and unending. That was the sound of everything breaking. 2 days earlier, it had started like any other ordinary morning before the files, before Barcelona, before the silence ended. People forget me. They always have. It's not an insult, it's a survival skill. In meetings, my voice fades into the air like background noise. In elevators, I'm the woman holding the coffee tray while others discuss strategies over my head. Being forgettable is a kind of shield. At Halden Systems, that invisibility kept me safe, or so I believed. My work sat in the quiet corners of the company's operations compliance reviews, risk audits, expense reconciliations, spreadsheets no one read unless something went wrong. Every code told a story: a dinner, a flight, a hotel room charged to client relations. Most analysts skimmed for math errors. I looked for patterns. After 6 months, the same 2 signatures began appearing across dozens of reimbursements: R, Hale, and E, Mercer, the CEO and his golden protege. The amounts were inconsistent: a $900 consultation lunch, a $14,000 client retreat, entertainment expenses marked non-disclosable. That phrase alone set off alarms. One night, while reconciling ledgers for the quarter, I opened a file labeled Client Hospitality Special Events. The spreadsheet linked to a private folder accessible only to the executive tier. The metadata told a different story, entries modified late at night, multiple times, from Richard Hale's account. I'd seen executives pad numbers before, but this was different. The irregularities weren't about greed, they were about concealment. When I mentioned the anomaly to my manager, Whitney Dunn, she lowered her voice. "Mara, drop it. You're not in the loop on these things." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "He's important. Don't make this a hill to die on." That was the first time I heard the word untouchable used for Evan Mercer. It hung in the air like something sacred and forbidden. I closed the folder, saved nothing, and sat there long after the office emptied, watching the city's lights flicker through the glass. Being unseen had always protected me, but that night, for the first time, it felt like a curse I would soon outgrow. Whitney chose a corner table far from the cafeteria windows. She stirred her coffee 3 times before speaking, eyes fixed on the swirl of cream. "Mara," she said softly, "you're starting to ask the kind of questions that don't get answers." I waited. She looked up only when she was sure no one nearby could hear. "He's too important. Don't push it." The words were quiet but heavy, like a door closing. I'd heard warnings before, different voices, same meaning. 3 years earlier, I'd worked at Vertex Industries, another polished company with glossy brochures about integrity and inclusion. There was a man there too, a senior executive who liked to stand too close, to make jokes he called harmless. When I reported him, HR thanked me for my courage, then suggested I take a week off to cool down. When I came back, my access card didn't open the door. 2 weeks later, he was promoted. That memory still carried a scent paper dust, stale perfume, the faint click of a conference door closing as they decided my future without me. I'd signed the separation agreement in silence, because silence was supposed to protect me. It didn't. It never does. Whitney sighed, still stirring. Look, Richard owes Evan more than anyone knows. He brought him in after the merger. You go after him. You go after the whole ladder. The cafeteria chatter faded to a hum. I noticed the lines around Whitney's mouth: fatigue, regret, fear. She'd learned the same lesson I once did. Survival here meant obedience. I'm just reviewing numbers. I said, exactly. She replied, keep it that way. When she left, I sat alone, the half-eaten sandwich cooling beside my laptop. Outside, Boston's wind pressed against the glass like a warning itself. I told myself I wasn't brave, just thorough, but the truth was simpler. Some wounds don't close until you make sure no one else gets them. After that lunch with Whitney, I learned to listen in quieter ways. Words were dangerous, but data never forgot. Each morning before the office filled, I'd open a fresh spreadsheet and log what I saw matching expense codes, repeating destinations, the same initials authorizing them EM and RH, always together, always after hours. The line items told a story the company didn't mean to tell two men who treated the corporate card like camouflage. I mapped the client entertainment trips by date and location: Denver, Chicago, Madrid. Each trip coincided with a handful of female employees being reassigned or resigning shortly after. The pattern wasn't a coincidence, it was choreography. Still, I needed more than numbers. So I began building a network of people like me, the ones no one noticed. The receptionist who saw who booked flights, the security guard who checked parking logs, the facilities clerk who replaced nameplates when employees suddenly transferred. They were invisible, just like I'd been. And invisibility has its own kind of power. Over stale coffee or quiet hallway chats, I collected fragments: a nervous intern who avoided eye contact with Evan, a marketing assistant who switched departments overnight, an accountant who'd quietly shredded duplicate reimbursement forms. None of them would go on record. All of them told the same story. When the company announced its annual leadership retreat in Barcelona, the name hit me like static. The same city from an old receipt Evan had personally approved months earlier. While executives toasted each other in rooftop bars, I stayed up late cross-checking room assignments and charges. One hotel staffer I contacted, a woman named Lucia, remembered an American guest causing trouble on a balcony one night. A frightened female employee had asked to change rooms the next morning, then checked out early. Lucia didn't remember her name, only the look in her eyes. That was when I stopped thinking of this as a compliance issue. It was no longer about numbers or policy. It was about the silence between signatures, the kind that destroys people if no one writes it down. The sound reached me first, a sharp intake of breath. A nervous laugh cut short. It came from the break room, where the hum of the refrigerator usually drowned everything else. When I stepped inside, Piper Lane, the new communications assistant, stood pressed against the counter, her knuckles white around a folder. Evan Mercer leaned close, one hand braced beside her, his body blocking her way out. "Need something?" he asked without looking at me. His tone was casual, confident, the voice of a man who'd never been told no. "I need you to step back," I said. He turned then, slow, annoyed. The easy grin didn't reach his eyes. "Excuse me." Piper's eyes flicked toward me, pleading, terrified. I stepped between them, forcing him a step back. "You heard me," I said quietly. "Step away." He gave a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Do you know who you're talking to?" "Yes," I said. My pulse was a drum in my ears. "The question is, do you—" The smirk froze. "Barcelona? I said. Just that word. The color drained from his face. He straightened, eyes narrowing, trying to read how much I knew. For a second, the silence between us felt electric, alive with all the secrets he thought were buried. He recovered fast, but not fast enough. "You're bluffing," he muttered. "Try me." Piper slipped out behind me, her footsteps a whisper across the tile. I didn't move until I heard the door close. Evan's jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you're getting into." I met his stare evenly. "Actually, I think I do." He pushed past me, the scent of his cologne lingering like static. The door swung shut behind him, leaving a faint echo. For a long moment, I stood there, breathing hard, watching the spilled coffee shimmer on the counter between us like evidence of something irreversible. When I finally turned off the lights, I knew the quiet part of this story was over. By morning, the whole floor knew something had happened. Conversations hushed when I walked past. Screens dimmed, chairs turned slightly away. The message arrived at 9:02 a.m., a calendar invite from Richard Hale, marked mandatory. The boardroom looked different in daylight. Richard stood at the head of the table, posture easy, smile rehearsed. Evan Mercer sat beside him, a faint bruise of sleeplessness under his eyes, but his confidence untouched. "Before we begin," Richard said, "I want to recognize Evan for resolving a sensitive matter yesterday. His professionalism under pressure reflects the kind of culture we strive for here." A few people clapped hesitantly. The sound felt hollow. Then he turned to me. "Mara, several team members have raised concerns about your conduct creating hostility, undermining leadership. Effective immediately. Your position is terminated. HR will assist with the transition. No warning. No chance to speak. Just like last time." Whitney sat near the end of the table, eyes down, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles blanched. When our gazes met, she shook her head slightly, almost imperceptibly. Her phone buzzed a moment later. Mine did too. "Whitney, he's protecting him. Please don't fight this." I didn't. Instead, I gathered my notebook, the one no one had ever asked to see, and stood. My badge hit the table with a soft click. Richard smiled politely, relieved. Evan didn't look at me at all. The elevator ride down was quiet except for the metallic hum of cables. In my pocket, the small silver flash drive pressed against my palm the weight of 8 months' work. Every discrepancy, every timestamp, every witness note lived there, locked behind layers of encryption. At home, I placed it on my desk beside a half-drunk cup of tea. The city outside buzzed with ordinary life, as if nothing had shifted. I opened my laptop, typed a single address, Board of Directors at HaldenSys.com, and began attaching files, expense reports, travel logs, statements, names. In the subject line, I wrote 3 words that made my hands stop shaking for immediate review. The summons came less than 24 hours after I hit send, a brief email from the board's executive assistant. "Your presence is requested tomorrow at 2 p.m. No subject line, no explanation. When I arrived, security led me through a corridor I'd never seen before. Quiet, carpeted, lined with portraits of founders whose eyes seemed to follow me. The boardroom itself smelled of oak and disinfectant, the air still from disuse. For a moment, I thought I'd walked into the wrong meeting. No attorneys, no executives waiting to cross-examine me. Instead, I saw faces I recognized: Piper, standing nervously near the window; Whitney, pale but resolute; 3 women from other departments, and beyond them, 2 former employees I'd once met for coffee months ago, when gathering whispers had been all I dared to do. They weren't supposed to be here, yet here they were. At the far end of the table sat Deborah Lynn, the company's chief financial officer. I'd only spoken to her twice before brief, courteous exchanges. She gestured to a chair. "Ms. Kellan, thank you for coming. Please sit." Her tone wasn't hostile. It was measured, deliberate. The meeting began with statements Piper describing the break room, her voice trembling but unbroken. Whitney admitting that she'd advised women to stay silent because she was afraid of losing her job, others recounting similar experiences from years past. Each story landed with the weight of something finally set down after being carried too long. Richard Hale's name came up again and again, approvals, excuses, cover-ups. Evan Mercer's too, threaded through every narrative like a stain that wouldn't wash out. When the room fell silent, Deborah folded her hands. Enough has been said to warrant action. I moved to suspend Mr. Mercer pending a third-party investigation and to initiate a formal review of Mr. Hale's conduct. A long pause followed, then a quiet chorus of ayes. The motion passed. No one applauded. There was only the sound of breath, the collective exhale of women who'd stopped holding theirs. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. Not as an anomaly, but as part of something far larger than myself. The backlash came fast. By Monday morning, an article appeared on a local business site quoting an unnamed company representative. It described me as a disgruntled former employee with a history of unsubstantiated complaints. Attached was a single, polished sentence that made my stomach turn. Her prior allegations at Vertex Industries were dismissed after internal review. The words were precise, professional, and devastatingly effective. By noon, 4 of the women who'd spoken before the board emailed to retract their statements. The messages were identical in structure, different only in signature. Each one ended with the same line, "I prefer not to be involved further." I didn't need proof to know how it happened. Someone had reached them promises, threats, both. I'd seen this playbook before. Richard Hale released a memo to all staff that afternoon, commending Evan Mercer's commitment to transparency and announcing his reinstatement while the independent review proceeds. In 3 paragraphs, 8 months of evidence vanished beneath corporate language. Whitney called me that night. "They're rewriting it. Mara, they're making you the problem." I watched the city through my apartment window, lights flickering like static. "Let them try," I said. This time, I was ready. Every interview, every note I'd taken had a parallel record screenshots, encrypted backups, time-stamped messages stored off-site under aliases no one at Halden could trace. Even the retraction emails had been flagged the moment they arrived. I'd anticipated the smear, the coercion, the reversal. Still, the hurt landed where armor couldn't reach. The quiet betrayal of those who'd found their voices, only to lose them again under pressure, stung worse than the headlines. But fear doesn't cancel truth, it only delays it. I opened my private drive, scrolling through the archive names, dates, file paths, the pattern that never lied. They'd turned on me once before, and I'd lost everything. But not this time. I wasn't fighting for my job anymore. I was fighting for the record that couldn't be rewritten. The emergency board meeting was called on a Thursday morning. A line of reporters had already formed outside Halden's glass tower by the time I arrived, their cameras reflecting the gray Boston sky. Inside, the air felt charged too still, like the seconds before a storm breaks. At the long table, Deborah Lynn sat at the head, flanked by the company's outside counsel and a court stenographer. Across from her were Richard Hale and Evan Mercer, both stone-faced, their lawyers whispering in low, urgent tones. When Deborah gestured to me, I slid the flash drive across the table. "This is the pattern report," I said. "Every transaction, every approval, every date tied to events where female employees or clients later filed informal complaints." The attorney connected the drive to the projector. The first slide appeared side-by-side charts of expense codes marked Client Hospitality and Private Reimbursement. The overlap was unmistakable. Deborah's voice stayed calm. "Mr. Hale, these approvals bear your signature. Can you explain why travel reimbursements to private resorts were coded as client events?" Richard's jaw tightened. "Those were legitimate business functions," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. The next slide showed hotel receipts, timestamps, and an internal memo with Evan's initials. Then Deborah switched to a final file labeled Barcelona, 2:14 a.m. The video grain was faint, but clear enough. a hotel corridor, Evan supporting a visibly intoxicated woman in a dress that dragged along the carpet. Moments later, Richard appeared from the other end of the hallway. Together, they half-carried her toward an elevator. No one in the room spoke. The sound of the woman's heels scraping against the floor filled the silence before the clip froze on the elevator doors closing. When the lights came up, Richard's lawyer leaned forward, whispering something that made him pale. Deborah's voice broke the quiet. "The authorities have been notified." 2 uniformed officers entered the room. Evan's chair scraped backward. Richard stood, trying to speak, but no words came. As they were led away, no one applauded. The only sound was the hum of the projector winding down proof that the silence they'd built had finally shattered. 3 weeks later, the office didn't feel like the same place. The walls were the same color, the glass still caught the same morning light over the harbor, but the air had changed. Conversations that once stopped when I entered now continued. People met my eyes instead of looking past me. Deborah Lynn moved into the corner office that used to belong to Richard Hale. No one said it out loud, but everyone noticed she kept the door open. Under her direction, Halden Systems began to rebuild from the inside out quietly, carefully. A new Ethics and Accountability Committee was formed, reporting directly to the board, and for the first time in company history, the role of Culture and Compliance Director was created. My name sat beneath that title on the announcement email. The day I returned, a dozen handwritten notes waited on my desk, some from people I knew, others from employees I'd never spoken to. Small words. "Thank you. I wish I'd said something sooner. You made it safer to stay." I spent the following weeks rewriting policies, rebuilding trust, and learning how to lead without becoming the thing I fought against. Power, I realized, doesn't have to corrupt, it just has to be used carefully. One afternoon, Piper Lane stopped by my office, holding a mug of coffee in both hands. She looked older somehow, not in years, but in steadiness. "You changed everything," she said. I shook my head. "Then make sure no one has to do it alone again." She nodded, setting the coffee on my desk before leaving. As the sun lowered over Boston, I stood by the window. The skyline was the same steel, glass, and motion, but it glowed differently now. The reflection that looked back at me wasn't the woman no one remembered. Revenge hadn't been about destroying anyone. It had been about rebuilding what they broke: truth, dignity, the quiet belief that one voice could matter. And for the first time in years, the silence surrounding me didn't feel like erasure. It felt like peace.